3 years, or even the 10 years that the state is doing, that's all state governed, the town will not, that's all state, correct?
Right, it's
That's
part
all
of the state, part of the state law.
And we're just abiding by their rules, the only thing we're looking at is the monetary.
Well, I think you have to think of it as enabling legislation, but there are some parts of it that are set, and then we can, as a town, adopt the limits,
Exactly.
change the limits.
That's what this new one says, is that it is enabling. The town can adopt it and set the lower and upper amount. So but it shall not exceed, let's see, exemption for a qualifying taxpayer is eligible for not to exceed 530,000.
So
Just
the
flat
biggest-
out.
So the biggest thing they're doing is they're giving a guideline on the higher amount and changing the number of years to 10 years.
10 years
And age.
and one age, 72.
Yeah.
And no qualifiers on assets or earnings.
No
Wow.
No
qualifiers.
qualifiers.
No
So this is a
qualifiers.
homestead exemption, essentially, right?
Sort of, yeah.
Wow.
That would have a
They're
huge-
hiding it without saying the
That'd be a
word
tough one to
homestead.
pass. Wouldn't that be really tough to pass considering like municipal like taxpayers association?
Breakdown of our committee is 10 to 8, so I know 8 will will vote against it. I don't know if we can,
Has anybody done a projection as to what that might do?
projection? No, they never do.
So has it been sent to a committee yet?
Yeah, my
Your committee, that's so interesting.
God.
And has a hearing been scheduled,
The
or
hearing was Monday.
was Monday?
Yeah.
And how did that go?
There were questions about how the age came to be,
Mhm.
and the fellow was very partisan about it, I have to say.
Mm.
And he didn't think that any of these progressive means testings really should apply to somebody who's been living in New Hampshire for 10 years and is 72.
That's interesting.
So I'm unclear whether this replaces,
It doesn't, it's in addition.
it's in addition to 7239A.
So,
So it's another elderly exemption program
With the same title.
with the same
The
title.
paragraph has the same.
Could the town choose not to adopt it?
Yes.
Yeah, see, that would be a.
Okay.
so if like Exeter did adopt it, where I'm gonna be 72,
Congratulations.
I've been living in here
You've been living here forever.
for 72 years.
Mhm.
I could just apply for this here, doesn't matter what my
There you go.
income is, what my assets are, what my,
Yeah, it's all right.
So,
that's
so
dangerous.
if we adopted this, Julie, we would have 2 elderly exemption programs in the town,
Yes.
and you could qualify for both
Some people could.
if you fit the criteria of the 72 and 10,
Mm-hmm.
and or and you were 65 and up, you could qualify under the other program.
Whichever works out best for you. I don't know that.
So
That was one of our questions was, can you get both of these?
Who
yeah, right.
sponsored the bill?
Let's see.
Mm.
Representative Belcher from Carroll, Moffett from Merrimack.
All the good stuff
There
comes
was
from
a,
Carroll
there was a
County.
Rockingham County person on there though, I saw.
Yep, Severin,
Yeah.
and Rockingham 30, I don't know which one.
I find it very odd that anyone would put that forward within a state with an aging population that has been here forever.
That was one of the questions that we
I-
had.
Yeah.
When I
I
heard
don't
about
think-
that last week, it just baffled me. I said, there's gotta be
Well-
something I'm missing.
Well, I think it's something they're missing, not what you're missing. I think clearly they don't understand the financial impact of that to everybody else. Like somebody
No,
has to pay the
and-
tax.
And it was disappointing that the Department of Revenue Administration didn't testify about it. Really, they only testify about technical things as opposed to is this the right thing to do.
Chris has her
Um,
hand up, actually.
And the New
Yeah.
Hampshire Municipal Association was neutral, I believe.
Interesting. Really? They
Yeah.
were neutral?
Mm.
Huh.
Wow.
Chris, you had your hand up?
Yeah, oh, good, you saw that, oh, that's great. Julie, do you think, I mean, with all this discussion, do you think there's a chance of it even like going through, considering everything?
Well, last year, our committee, in the last few years, our committees have my committee has been made up of people who said, we're tired of all of this, we're tired of having special groups that get a break and the rest of us are at the other end of the balloon and pay more. This year, both sides are composed of a majority of new people. So, I don't know.
Oh, a bit tricky.
I know that my caucus, it is a partisan position, so I can say it here. My caucus will vote against this.
Right.
I cannot tell you what, and I cannot tell you if we have convinced anybody else to vote against it. But it,
Okay, now, I hear that, I'm just thinking, still, even if it's only people, the constituents are the same.
yeah,
We got a lot of people over a certain age in New Hampshire.
yep, yep.
But,
And
but
I,
again, are they informed?
well, that's,
You know, thing.
that would be our purpose, or not. We can choose to remain silent and see if somebody picks it up. Especially
Wow.
these enabling ones. Yeah, yeah,
But the town still has to adopt it before
Yes.
anything happens.
yes.
Okay,
And
so,
what's the
yeah, we
chances?
still have the opportunity to say,
Yeah, we have
Thanks, but no
to
thanks.
adopt it and then rescind the previous one, so we only have this one. It would be less
Okay.
confusing to have just one, not the other, whichever way we go. This one would be much more revenue loss
Oh,
than the
that'd
other.
be huge.
I can't imagine.
So just, I guess my last question on that I had, because that was some of the questions I had tonight. If they did adopt it, it would be through the same process through a town meeting.
Warrant
So far,
articles,
yeah,
I think it'd be more dangerous.
I know, well, nobody's come forward
Yeah,
with.
because
no.
most of the people that vote are so.
They're
already, you know?
Oh, no.
Or approaching it.
It's gonna give a new thing to the live free or die.
You know?
That's
Um,
crazy.
In the past years, we've had people that have come in and asked to be exempted from just the school tax because they're over 65 and their kids are no longer in school, so
See, I've
why
heard
should we
that,
pay
yeah.
for our future
Yeah.
leaders? And those were not enabling, those were right out state law proposed, and they fell on deaf ears. The same fellow put in one for people over 52, or people over 65, or people over 70. All the same, just change the age.
Wow.
And we just said, why? See you next year. So, that's the news from the state so far. I will keep an eye out and try to get to, through Janet and Russ, the.
What was this? There was a second bill.
That was the elderly one. The next one is about disabled vets.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if you wanted to deal with those separately or.
Yeah, we had been talking about them separately, but that's, if there's something on the state level on the docket for that, we should be aware of it.
Yeah, this one is interesting. It's the service-connected total disability shall be, the tax exemption shall be the amount of $701, which it is currently. And instead of up to $4,000, it's 100% of the property tax. And the problem with this one, and DRA did come in on this one, because they set our tax rate based on what our population is and what our history has been. They cannot do it by percent property value, which changes, every
Right.
time a house is sold. So they said like a vicious circle of when you.
So it has to be a dollar amount.
So that one I think will fail just for that reason. Because you just cannot predict how much revenue is gonna go out the door or not come in.
Could they amend it to be, like, right now it's 701, and I forget what.
It's up to 4,000.
Up to 4,000, so they could amend it though to become a lot higher.
Yeah, there's still time
so.
to amend it, but nobody made that suggestion. So yes, there are several, so far that's all I know about exemptions coming up. But let me just double check. And because that one has, those ones have been heard, any testimony, they have the remote testimony you can sign in onto for a bill on a certain day, bill number, as opposed or supporting it, and you can add text or a letter. If I were you, I would recommend emailing the entire committee, because it goes through the committee first. We hear it, then we have an executive session where we vote on whether to send it to the House floor or not. So if the committee hears first from most people that we don't like this, and you can give the reasons, then that might influence them more on the decision that we make.
Could you send us that correct email that we could
Yeah.
do to the right, so I know there's different links and everything up there.
Yeah.
So,
There used to be one to email all members.
Some of them do, and some of them work, and some of them don't. I've tried.
It's,
I guess I would have to, it's interesting because it's hard to articulate why would, it just seems like senseless. Is that enough to be opposed about? Like,
it's nonsensical.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't have it anymore.
But if something like that were to pass, it would be town meeting 2026 before we would deal with it.
It's looking at what.
it certainly would make things a lot more complicated, but I also don't think that Exeter would have done something like that.
Well, if this goes through, and the governor signs it, then it becomes, as we said, enabling. Somebody would have to run it, you could select board or petition of the citizens petition to adopt it. Then we have to be careful to rescind the other one, so you don't qualify for both.
Right.
That was a big question. It doesn't say you can't, it just says you may.
So this would be an amendment to 7235 1A.
It's in 7235, and it's an additional,
A new section.
That's what I
yeah,
thought.
it's
but-
a new paragraph under 72.
So it would automatically replace what we have with,
No, it wouldn't.
it would not.
No.
So would they both be on the docket, so the town would have to look at both of them and decide?
We'd have to, the ideal thing would be to rescind, if we were interested in this, is to rescind the one that we adopted a zillion years ago and replace it with this new one.
So let's just say that something like that did by chance town, and then would it have it would probably have an impact, like if somebody in our county chose to go that route, like wouldn't it skew like county tax proportions, like, so it could have impact on us even if it wasn't something that.
Well, the county tax is figured the same way as town is. It's the population of the whole, the property owners of the whole
Okay.
county pay for whatever the budget is. So that's.
But
that's
wouldn't they have
spread
to
out.
factor in more, like if they had certain areas that had these 72-year-olds that were getting 100% tax
No,
exemption?
it's only a municipal.
Okay.
Because we collect
Okay.
the taxes.
Okay.
Sorry, Janet's having technical issues. Well, I know tonight, one of the things we were trying to do was set aside some priorities or set some priorities as far as where the committee wanted to concentrate its focus on. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to think any further about that or.
I think based on all the information that Russ provided, I looked that over just to kind of get familiar with what's there, because
Mhm.
like you said earlier, it's a lot of data.
Yeah, it is.
We have a lot to work with in that regard, but
Yeah.
if you look at the MS1, that clearly the elderly is the most utilized exemption. So I think that, and the fact that it hasn't been looked at in almost 20 years,
Mhm.
That probably should be one of our priorities.
Yeah.
And then the other one that stood out to me is the all veterans, because where Exeter's kind of the outlier. Most of the surrounding communities have that one.
Yeah, we
So
have,
why don't we, or
we
should
haven't
we, or?
adopted it, but yes. One of the reasons that we hesitated was that we just don't have any idea how many veterans are out there.
Yeah.
And that bill, that piece of legislation applies to whatever level of service you've done, whether you were honorably discharged, or whether you just went through basic training and decided not to continue. Or for some reason, like I know a woman that was, it's not honorably discharged, it's another name for it, but she didn't maintain her weight. And they let her go with honor, not,
Some sort of separation of service that's in between honorable and dishonorable.
yeah.
So just the DD 214 that they have to prove verification for that exemption, I wonder, because you could serve in the reserves and have one of those, or.
I'm
I'm
familiar
curious.
with the process of it, I don't know.
Interesting. I agree 100%, Mark. I think that the elderly, I'm lenient towards thinking that it needs a lot of focus, but it needs some. Like, I think we need to talk about the elderly exemption status and where that goes.
Elderly, not veterans.
I mean, we could come up with a recommendation not to change anything, but I think, based on the utilization, I think we should at least put that at the top of the list.
I think the big thing I've been thinking about all this here is the criteria of getting the exemption.
For elderly,
And I kind of worked on one thing, and I actually did a monthly budget on my own personal stuff to see what does it cost me to live for a month. And I figured it was a good basis to go off of I'd like to be able to have a conversation with a group to see what we could add, what we could subtract, come up with something that says, okay, this is what it really costs a person to live for a year. And then we were able to say, well, what are we looking at as far as the levels of income right now? Because everyone meets it. But, you have to look at what Social Security pays. I'd like in New Hampshire, it's like $1,700 some odd dollars a month. Nationally, it's like $1,900. But you're still looking at that with a family of two, it comes up to like $40,000. We're within the framework, but we gotta also look at, is it adequate? So I think we have to look at, to me, we have to look at that as number one, not just put out a number, but have a reason to put out that number. Based on what we're all paying out realistically. And I've talked to a lot of people in the last few months about it. You get funny comments, like I show people, I said, well, I can live for this much a month. And they say, well, how can you do that? Like $800 a month for groceries. They said, we go out to dinner about 4 times a week, you gotta include all that. They said, no, that's not the criteria. So I'm looking at a realistic criteria to have a realistic budget to get an amount. And then I think the other thing I really feel bad for is a lot of the people right now, let's say that your value of your house was 250,000, we'll say $240,000. So you fell within a criteria to get a full amount of money on your full taxes. Now taxes doubled or went up 60%. So now you're up to into the 300 on that same house. So now you wasn't paying any money, but now you have to come up with some money.
Yeah.
And when you start doing even at the 26.78 versus a 17.79, you're still coming up with short money on these people. So I think that's a criteria we have to look at.
I ran an analysis from somebody, a senior that lives in my community, going back 10 years, looking at income over the last 10 years versus the exemption versus taxes paid in. And it's really interesting to see how this recent adjustment is affecting them. But it's interesting that they were getting the exemption way back when they had, but like now we're talking about this person is now widowed, making $1,800 a month didn't have a tax bill and now does. So like, that's a huge impact as somebody that's living off of $1,800 a month.
Well, I guess I could hand these out. I don't know if you could send these along to
Yeah.
Chris and But this is basically, this is just a format to think about that I have done. And this is on, this is just like a monthly thing to have people look at it and say, well, what is, you know, what is realistic and what is unrealistic? And to see what prices really are. And the other thing I have is the average, you know, social security. I use the national level too. So.
Is that where you pulled out? It's the national?
Right, and so you start looking at that. I'm sorry, I don't have one for you, Chris, but I'm sure you'll be able to send one over.
Do we have to unmute Chris, or can she unmute
I
herself?
can,
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yeah, go.
Okay. The only thing I wanted to just make sure I said was that as far as I think some of these, you know, we have two big ones, I think is elderly and veterans. And I
Mhm.
definitely think going one at a time so we can really focus on things and make sure they're done thoughtfully and properly is to go one at a time. I definitely personally feel like that the elderly exemptions would be a good one to start with, to get our teeth into.
yeah, I agree.
Jerry, is this $1,000 a month for town tax?
Well, that's that 1,000, that's what myself, you know, I'm figuring for me paying
So
taxes.
12,000 a year?
Yeah, so when you start looking at that, that becomes you know, figure that actually comes out, because if you're not paying taxes, it comes out. So this is why this is subjective, because I got water and sewer to the side, because obviously water and sewer is not a issue for me, but it is for other people. You know, because that would be an extra $100 a month.
Okay.
So I mean, there are things that give and take, there might be condo fees.
Yeah.
But it becomes one of those things that, you know, if you kind of look at it and figure that out, gives you an idea of, do we have enough money? And it looks like there is, but that doesn't mean much money left.
Yeah, I would,
Hi, Janet. It's Russ. How are you? Good. So you're joining us by phone instead of via Zoom.
Okay, that works.
How's that? Is
Chris,
that
can you
okay?
hear- Can you hear Janet,
That's
Chris?
fine with me.
I can. All
Okay.
good.
Great.
Yeah, it's the same thing on the spreadsheet that I was doing. I was looking at the different tax rates and the amount that's gone back. You said it's been the same since 2008, but you look at the difference between. I mean, that $40,000 income is about $3,300 a month, but I'm saying, like you're saying, the average income to a single person living on social security at $1,900 is pretty
It is, it's low.
low.
Can we just pause this conversation just for a moment and I can have Janet explain what she sent to Jerry?
That'd be good.
Janet, the data that you sent out to Jerry.
Yeah.
Is that, we're looking at the amounts of the elderly exemption. There were a couple of questions that came up. One was, what is a multi-unit elderly exemption?
So some people have duplexes.
Okay,
They rent out half of it and they own the other half.
Okay.
They can only be exempt on the portion that they live in.
got it.
But the other half's
Because all
considered
the
asset.
prices went so high, now they are getting the full exemption.
Okay.
How do they show that they are? Oh, what's the word I want? I don't know. How do they prove they're renting out or not renting or? You know,
I don't care if they're renting it out or not, as long as they're not living in it.
But how does that income, like the asset qualification, Jenna, how can they own half a duplex and not be over the asset limit of $194,000?
Because we didn't requalify them this year.
Now, so as far as the asset, Janet, if you're renting out half of your duplex, but your house is not included, does the other half of the duplex become a asset, or is it not considered an asset?
No, it's still an asset. But because we didn't requalify anybody this year, after the revaluation,
Mhm.
Oh, so prior there, it wasn't assessed above that assessed value that would put it in the asset, above the asset limit.
right,
Got ya.
exactly.
When does that requalification take place, Janet? When will it?
So I did it in 2023. The state requires us to do it at least every 5 years. So that means 2028, I would redo the whole town, but it can be done at any time.
Okay,
That's interesting.
thank you.
Now, the other question that came up too was the years. Like someone's 2023, someone 2024. What does that correlate to?
This is on the left-hand side of the sheet, Janet, where it says, where it lives.
That's when they got the
Oh.
exemption.
That's what I got,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay,
We qualified everybody in 23. Everybody should be 23 or 24.
Yeah, now it makes sense. That makes complete sense, Janet. Thank you.
are 24s new ones that have come on the books?
This year, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Got it. Thank you.
Let's see, what else did I have?
Surprising amount of 80+, right?
Oh. That's reasonable.
And then the total, I had a question, Janet, the total assessed parcel value number? Is that net of the exemption, or is that the total parcel value?
Thinking that that's the total. So how does the spreadsheet look? It says total assessment and then it says exempt amount.
It says type, amount, and then total assessed parcel value.
Okay.
So amount
I
is,
don't know what it looks like.
well, amount is
That would
the,
be the total.
From the year that they applied or from the current assessment, Janet?
Current,
Okay,
it's current.
thank you.
Yep. So I sent in two.
Yeah, the other one
One
is a
was
one.
for 2024
Mm-hmm,
was what was on the MS1.
okay,
And I think there's two more columns on that,
Right,
and it shows, so it shows the actual amount of the exemptions on the last column.
right.
And the column before that, if it's a negative, their property is less than the exemption. If it's a positive, that's the amount that they are paying taxes on.
okay.
And that's the one that I had copied to bring in, but forgot it in the
Oh.
folder.
Okay, so we'll make sure we have that for next time. Because that's
Talking to me?
yeah, because that's a good piece of, we just want to make sure the committee has all the data, that's all.
We only printed the first one, Janet, and the second one didn't get printed, so we're only looking at the current right now.
I apologize. I got
Yeah,
bumped
you
down.
did put both. That was my fault.
go ahead, Christine.
Okay, I'm good. You hear me? I got bumped out and I just got back in. The documents you guys looking at, was that emailed to us?
Yes.
Okay,
Afternoon.
all right. And again, I apologize, but having had that surgery, I'm a little bit messed up, to say the least. Still recovering. Okay, I'll dig through and see if I can pull that back up again. Thank you.
So as I understand it, one of the sheets has all the elderly exemptions on it and the disabled exemptions with the amounts. And then the total assessed parcel value alongside it. And then the other one has a couple of more columns that show if it's a negative number, essentially someone's getting 100% exemption.
Correct.
Okay,
Give you an idea.
yeah.
Russ, did I send you both of those or not?
Yeah, I have them on my phone, but I'm doing double duty with you on the phone, so
Okay.
I'm just getting, well, you know.
Not today.
Off the top.
Oh,
of
no,
your
I
head-
can't do it
Off
all.
the top of your head, Janet, do you know how many people that were probably getting the full assessment
No,
value? You don't know how many, or like now not gonna
No.
know?
no. I guess I could sort through it and figure it out,
Mhm.
but I didn't even print it because to me, that's old news. You know, that's last year, now we're going on to this year, so everything's gonna change.
Janet, if the committee was going to look at elderly exemptions as one of their focus areas, what are your thoughts on how they should look at it, or some of the key data points? I guess one of the questions is, should we requalify, since we just had a revaluation, should we requalify people in 2025?
If we were going to do that, we probably should have thought of that already.
Okay,
Only because it's a lot of work and it takes me probably a month just to get the stuff ready to go.
Mhm.
And so I usually do it in December, so it's ready to go in January,
got it.
because they have to have everything back to me by April.
Okay,
And these people are 80 years old.
Sure.
They don't
Right.
do what they need to do.
sure. Okay,
I would recommend next year,
yeah,
no matter what happens, that they get requalified next year.
okay. All right,
Whether it's a recommendation that it goes up or down or whatever, because it still has to go to the deliberative session, and it still has to go on the warrant,
right. Okay,
no matter what is decided.
all right, so we're gonna talk to you further about this and other credits
Okay,
as we go along here.
okay.
Okay,
Maybe we'll be able to Zoom next time.
that would be wonderful.
Christine had problems
don't-
getting in too.
What's that?
Christine had trouble getting in. She finally did, but she had some difficulty in the beginning too.
Oh, okay. I don't know, because this is the laptop from work, so I'm not sure if there's some kind of a block on it. I don't know. I'll
Hmm.
have to talk to Steve.
Okay,
I got a question, Janet, one of the papers we got in here was on the Portsmouth tax deferral program. Which,
Okay.
I, okay,
It is, nobody has applied for it in years, since since I've been here, nobody has applied for it, so, I have written off a couple, I mean, they paid it off and we've gotten rid of the liens right when I first started, so we're talking 25 years ago now. We do have the program. It is mandatory that everybody has the program. Everybody can have their own minimums and maximums and all that good stuff, but it still has to follow the same procedure as everybody else. They have to be elderly or disabled. And Russ and Corey and I don't know who else, we did discuss it earlier in the year.
mhm,
And we were gonna go by the same qualifications as the elderly exemption. So they could qualify for the elderly exemption and then get the deferral on top of it. The deferral does have to be paid back. There is interest on it. It is a lien. It is recorded. And it's considered a welfare lien.
So it's gotta be a nightmare when that person passes away and probate and all that stuff, taking, like, it just seems like it's setting people up for. Like, it just seems, yeah.
going through
It's a
similar
lot of
things like
work
that.
and it's a lot of tracking. And
Tracking a lot.
it only can go up to, I'm gonna say 80% of the assessed value. So if the assessed values drop, I don't know how that affects it.
It's 85%.
Like I said, I've been here for 25 years and I've never done one. So
yeah,
I just think you're giving up the equity, like, I don't know, you're giving up equity in your house, like you're paying interest on that. It just seems like I mean, I get it, but it's like, it doesn't seem like the best solution for people to get out of a.
Well, I think that the interest is the only thing that I have a problem with.
Yeah,
The deferral, I don't have a problem.
yeah,
with.
sure.
That's one of,
It's
that's a bill that the state has too, not counting the, word I want. What did you just say?
Primary
Deferral.
residence?
No,
The deferral,
no, not in the deferral,
the interest, yeah.
not including the interest and the abatements and.
Yeah.
that we do.
Quite honestly, I look at this deferral program as just the way I would like to really see it, but not. Because the deferral, basically, when they die, they get the money
town,
back.
the money comes back.
And I have a problem right now with, when you look at the sheets that we have, we've got a lot of $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 homes. And you hate to give up a lot of money for 10, 15 years and they pass away and you don't recoup anything. And that's, I mean, on a tax basis for the town, that's rather disastrous, because that's a lot of money that goes out.
Yeah.
And I just feel this, you know, I could see more people starting to apply for this. Because I was surprised that there was only 155 now, but I think it's something that could mushroom, and I think we have to be prepared to do something different.
I think you have a lot of seniors though in manufactured housing, and if there's tax deferral there and then the home doesn't even hold the value, like, I just think there could be some like.
Some of them won't.
Some of them won't.
Some
I'm
won't,
saying,
but some
like, it's
will.
Janet, have we seen more interest in the tax deferral program?
I have not seen any.
Okay.
I don't think people.
I'm kind of surprised, and maybe it will come, but
Mhm.
that is one that they have, I believe they have to apply for March 1st, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
How would they even
Oh.
know, Janet, though? How would they know that program exists? The first I heard of it was this committee meeting last month.
Ask. I mean, I've had hundreds of phone calls after the bills went out. And I've explained their different options, and I've given everyone that option, and everyone that I have given it to says, I don't wanna lean on my house.
Right.
So, and I get that,
Mhm.
but, I mean, that is an option, and they have opted out as of now. I have not seen any.
Interesting. I look at these, all these exemptions and deferrals, et cetera, and they all have different criteria for how long you've lived in your home or how long you've lived in New Hampshire. We all just get along.
You know, I think the way the program is set up, you know, I guess I'd look at it, someone could actually sell a house. We'll say for $1 million, we'll just say as a round figure, come to Exeter, find a house, $4 million, buy that house and fall into line with this program that we have. You know, it's very possible. And those are the type of things that I really kind of looked at as a committee, we kind of have to watch out for, you know, because as property values, I saw the list that Janet gave us, as we're watching these property values go up, you're starting to see a lot of people are somehow, you know, they probably don't have the money, but they're falling in line with houses that are worth $500,000-$600,000. And and with everything going up even higher now, what's going to happen? So,
We gotta keep people in their houses though. That's
well,
my
you do, and
idea,
that's what I
yeah.
mean. You got to come with a more creative way to do it.
Yep. Yeah, like I'm more concerned again about people just not paying, like not paying in general, like, you know, like saying, like, if I have to opt out of one or the other. I mean, and again, I think that's another challenge that I know for in being in the work I'm in, is telling you that some people, the process to ask for these things is just completely overwhelming to them when they're under this type of financial circumstances. Like I said, I mean, I look at some of this stuff too, and I think, geez, you know, you got a $600,000 house and you can have up to 194,000 in assets. I'm not really worried about those people. I hate to say it, but I'm not.
No, I'm not either.
If I have a, you know, if I have a bond, if I have financial assets of that, I feel like I should be paying like, but I'm talking about people that have $50 left over at the end of the month.
Right.
Well, I'm worried about the people this year that who basically were not paying taxes because they fell in line with the guidelines of the 236.
That's, yeah.
And all of a sudden now they're looking, they're not even aware that they're gonna have $1,000 tax bill and those are the people I worry about right now.
This person that is on this spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Basically, if I had not said to this person, you need to open your tax bill because you're going to owe taxes. Oh dear. Yeah,
Hmm.
so, yeah.
That is a big problem. They haven't paid taxes in years. They get the tax bill, they throw it in the trash, they don't even look at it.
Yep.
Hmm.
And that is a big problem.
Yeah, fortunately, I think it's Stacy with the pay, I helped this person pay, she was great, she waived a little bit of interest, I was like, let's not, we're gonna pay this, but like, yeah, it's like. It's just evident that it's gonna have impact, like I said, at the end of the day,
But maybe that's one of the things as a committee we can look at is how is that information getting out
yeah.
to the people in town? And is there a resource that we can identify that would help people navigate the process,
And there's a lot of resources too, they really are, it's just a matter of, it's communication, and people are like, it's really about how people, and we all assume that everybody. Like, I hope that everybody knows about these exemptions, and not that we wanna like push it out the door, cause it affects all of us, but at the end of the day. I think that there's some people that, and I know Pam at the town's been super helpful to some of the people coming in here to get help, but it's like.
Well, they all are. I
Yeah.
mean,
Mhm.
Janet is, Stacy is, Donna Bennett, our deputy tax collector is, Pam is. I mean, anybody who inquires about these programs, we have, this just came up at Riverwoods yesterday, our culture of assistance that we have. We spend time with people and we really drill down into their individual needs. So,
Who does the tax, helps with tax preparation? With seniors, is it the AARP? I know that, people
There's a
volunteer to
couple
go.
groups that
There's a
do it.
cut there, I
Yeah.
looked it up, I think it's actually like 5 or 6 in the county, there's quite a few programs that can help.
Cause I know my mother's was always done when she lived at the housing authority. Whatever group came there, they did her taxes and.
Chris, go ahead.
Okay, great. Sorry, I just keep wiggling around, so I don't want to have my video on. What was just raised was about how many people go from having no taxes to suddenly having to pay taxes. Because of the change of, with the valuations. So my question is, I don't know if we know this yet, but what is that number that went from zero paying, this number of people not paying anything to now that's jumped up to another number? Or what is that number? Do we know that yet?
Yeah, I asked Janet, she said she didn't have that count yet, but she could go through and like, look, cause
Yeah. Because I think that's really huge as far as figuring out, is this something that needs a big discussion? I don't know if it needs a big discussion until we know if that's affecting a lot of people and what's that actual number at the end of the day when you sum it all up. I hope that makes sense.
I was just going through the list that Jerry printed and going through the assessed value versus the full exemption amount, and kind of, you could almost guesstimate, because if you're looking at something that is like a 445 and the tax increase, that probably the last last assessment period, they probably didn't have a tax bill, and now they're gonna have, because it didn't, I'm assuming most, but at least 50%? Yeah.
I think it was, yeah, 50 to 60%.
And then manufactured housing went up 149%.
Yeah.
So you could almost tell in here the values. And so I think it's pretty significant from my first couple of views of the pages, Chris, that I'm up to about 75 on the first 3 pages.
Okay, yeah, I obviously wasn't able to get that, so. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how big this impact is.
Have the report from 2023. And you can compare what they were assessed for in 23 to what they're assessed for in 24. But I can't give you map and lots or addresses or names.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But you can kind of look at how many were totally exempt then and how many are totally exempt now. I guess if somebody's interested, I can take that out and send it off to the committee if you want me to.
That would be great.
That would be very good.
Okay.
And would that be something that we can have one person? Would it be an Excel spreadsheet? Janet?
I can send it to whomever you want me to.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because then we can put in the calculations of what the exemption was at their before valuation and what it would, the tax cost would be after the valuation.
Right. Based on the
So
tax
if we
rate.
can put a formula in the, I guess,
The-
whoever you give
like
it
I
to.
said, the only problem is I cannot give you map and lots or paying.
No, we
Jason.
just need the, we have the list here of what, people are paying $0 and then we revalued their property from whatever was on there to.
Yeah, that was this one. That's what I did here, so I actually took the allowance and divided, and it figured out the taxes for me, that you could actually see
Yeah.
what was allowed based on the assessment at the time.
I mean, need to plug in the new.
We went from
value.
71,300 to 218,000 in a decade. That's a huge jump.
So I do have another report somewhere. I don't think I've done it for 24 yet, but maybe I have. That actually shows the tax impact to everyone else for elderly exemptions.
Well, we had that the last
Okay.
meeting, didn't we?
Yeah, I thought we did that, but we can look.
The tax impact.
You know, how many dollars or cents it costs everybody else to have all these properties
I would love to have that.
exempt.
But I thought it was like $1 million. We talked about that the last meeting. It was over a million.
That's less than that. It's a little bit less than that.
Yeah, that includes the veterans
Oh,
credits.
the veterans, so, but just the elderly was,
Is, it's very high, but the thing is that we had never assessed it before.
Mhm.
So they're now getting the exemption, but we never captured those values in the first place, so that's kind of deceiving too.
Mm.
And Janet, that's a one-time exemption, correct?
Yeah, unless you sell the property. And then whoever buys it has to reapply.
but do they get that exemption every year when there's like for the cycle of the assessment?
You get it every year,
The
it's a
permanent,
permanent exemption, unless you sell the property.
But
And
it's
then
not,
new people have to reapply for it.
but it devalues over time, correct? I mean, it's not gonna be, if it's 10,000 today, it's not gonna be 10,000 next year. is it?
I think it's irrelevant, because once they
Yeah.
grant the exemption, it doesn't matter.
Panels are totally exempt.
Regardless of value, they're going to be exempt at 100%.
If it's 100,000, you're gonna get 100,000 off your exempt your assessment across the board.
Yeah,
So we don't help.
yeah, we value each panel at $500.
Wow.
Okay.
But let me ask a question. So if the impact of the dollar amount, like I think we were looking at assessed value, I think, or we were looking at the dollar amount. If more people now have higher exemptions or are paying in more, doesn't that lessen the amount of the dollar impact? Because if like now more people are actually paying in because they don't qualify for the full exemption.
to the people that have
To us, to everybody else who pays taxes, yeah.
So I did a comparison. I did a comparison of the MS1 for 23 and 24,
Mhm.
because I wanted to see what the impact of the reval was. And I was gonna do some more work on this, so I'll have that for next time, but the number of elderly exemptions, I only looked at elderly to start, was about the same. 191 in 23 and 186 in 24. The amount exempted in 23 was 22 million and change. The amount exempted in 24 was 31 million. So only a 38% increase instead of the 60%. So clearly, some of the burden is shifted back to the elderly from
Correct.
the rest.
I don't think, yeah.
I wanted to look at that for like,
That's interesting.
when the last time it was changed.
Mhm.
Like, if we could look at an MS1.
Janet, did you hear that?
No, No, I did not.
How much in 23, Mark?
The exempted amount?
Yeah,
Was 22 million. And 31 million in 24.
okay. Does that sound right to you, Janet? 22 million in 23 and 31 million in 24?
It could be, couple of reasons. One, we have more people apply,
Okay,
each year, and some
About the
people
same.
drop off, but some people get added. And then, of course, the assessed values went up.
I mean, just that in itself. Someone that can get a full,
oh,
someone that can
okay.
get a full value and say their
So,
mobile was valued at 100. They're
Now
getting
it's
only
two,
100
yeah.
of that 200 and, was it 36? Now if it's gone up to 236,
Getting the 152,
it's
or whatever, yeah.
it's doubled that, so
Mhm.
I can see where that's.
so you heard that, Janet?
That's true, it
As-
goes the other way.
That's how that works, yeah.
Yeah, so essentially, if somebody was living in a $50,000 manufactured home that doubled in value to 100,000, they were getting $152,000 exemption. They're still covered at 100%, but the number goes into that 31 million
Yes,
that we're now exempting
Yes.
more of the
Yes.
whole than we were in the past. Okay,
right. Yep.
well, that makes sense.
It went down.
Correct.
Mhm.
So the dollar shift is different.
Yes,
The tax rate went down, but you also, the one figure that we don't have are the people that were, for example, getting that 236, because that's what their place was worth. And now it's worth 350, and they're still getting the 236. So those are the figures to me, we don't see.
Right.
So now they're having to come up with cash where they didn't before, so there's a lot of figures that are,
In play.
Yeah.
It's going like,
Yeah.
it was funny today, I looked at that, I was looking at various tax exemptions for like people that live in my community now. I was really surprised, I'm like, oh, it's not gonna affect them, it's not gonna affect them. I was like, so many of the assessments were still under that threshold of the 152.
Hmm.
But it's the ones that are just over that you know that it's gonna have an impact, and that's why like, how do you move with this? Because you don't wanna make it so high that it's gonna have this huge financial impact, but it has to be enough to make sure that, I mean, honestly, it's the really struggling, or is it? I don't even know, like, to be honest, I'm more worried about working class, low income individuals that can't pay their tax bills right now than I am people that can get exemptions, but that was my sadness for the day.
What I was trying to come up with was a percentage of residential value, what that exemption was. But the missing piece I have right now is I have residential land and residential buildings and manufactured housing, but I don't know where I'm gonna get the manufactured housing land value, because that's in commercial probably, right?
Well, that's another key point, is that in on the manufactured housing community, the homeowners aren't paying the landowner tax, but they're paying it through their lot rent, so
Right.
essentially they are paying it
Hmm.
because the landowner's paying it.
Right.
And there's assessed values on those communities too, but it's not gonna be factored into exemptions, because they wouldn't qualify on that basis.
Janet, is that the case? The land in the manufactured home parks is in the commercial?
owned by the top.
Right. Where does it sit?
Is it
Where do we find it on the MS1?
I believe it is under commercial, I'd have to
Commercial.
look again. It's
Okay.
under, yeah.
So I figured then I would have to go to each tax card to find it, so that's an exercise.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's commercial because we do an income statement on it.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of the number, but it doesn't come to me.
So it's
It's pumpkin turning time at that.
yeah. So it sounds to me like a good valuable data point would be to try to capture the parcels that were paying zero tax but now are paying some tax.
Yep.
If we can
something together and figure it out, because I can see the map and lot.
Mhm.
So I know who goes with what, because
Right.
you can't compare 23 to 24 because people have been added and people have been subtracted.
Mhm.
So it's not like you can just put them up next to each other and say, oh, this one went up 200,000 and this one went up, you know, because if I give it to you, all you're gonna see is numbers.
Mhm.
So let me see what I can do to put something together before the next meeting, which is what, in a month?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
middle, third Wednesday,
So,
yeah.
Yeah,
okay. And in the meantime, I will send, if you want, I'll send the 23 exemptions. Or do you want me just to put this list together and send that?
I think you can just put the list together and send it.
Okay, okay. Now, also, like I said earlier, that I have, I don't know if I've done it this year or not, but I have a report that shows the impact to everyone else.
Right. So sort of a dollar value
To the tax dollar.
translation of the 31
Yeah.
million, of the 31 million, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have it. If I have it, I'll just send it. Now, who am I gonna send? Should I send this to everybody?
Yeah, we'll get together on a list of, make sure you have the full list of committee members and that sort of thing, so everybody gets the same information.
I think Julie was
Okay.
recommending that just go to one person, is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
from one person.
From one person.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, from one
And
to
as long
all.
as it goes in the packet, I can maybe.
Yeah.
And then we don't respond to it, just.
Yeah, don't
I
respond
think
to
it
all.
did. Nope, you're still there, Janet.
Okay.
I just,
I'm still.
Those are weird noise.
I just got a warning on my phone that it's a little low, so.
Before you go, Janet, I have a curious question for you. How often do you see folks come in that are trying to apply for exemption that might not qualify? Do you come across that often, or do you basically see people that are like just?
Happens, it is not common. I usually get maybe 2 people a year that I deny.
Do you know what the basis is
Usually what-
typically?
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not there right now, obviously, but what I'll do is I'll stand at the counter with them and I'll go through it. And if I can see right away that they're not gonna qualify, I don't make them fill out the forms and everything unless they want to. But it's not common. Usually people know the rules before they come in and they know whether they're gonna qualify or not.
Mhm.
What do you think disqualifies those that don't qualify? Is it income? Is
They
it
have too much income.
income? Okay, it's usually income.
Usually it's income. Sometimes it's assets because they have 401ks and money markets and stuff like that, and they don't realize that all has to be out of their assets.
Okay, well, that's good to know that people are being forthcoming about it. Yeah, and that's the other thing I was wondering, if the income levels need to be looked at as well. Pretty low income
In order
level.
to stop the bleeding, I try to let them know before they do anything, what the qualifications are, and that I can't make exceptions for one person. That, you know, it is what it is, and I have to follow the rules.
Right.
And most people understand that. Yeah, you get the few that well, it's only $10 or whatever, and I'm sorry. If I make that exception for you, I have to do it for everyone, and I can't. So most people are very understanding, and they don't even bother if they know they're not going to qualify.
Got it. Got it.
Okay. Thank you,
And
Janet.
Russ's phone is going to crack, and I'm going to too. So
You're
Thank you
gonna,
for your help, Janet.
yeah, well,
feel free to either call me or send me an email, and I'll do my very best to get back to you with whatever I can that you're looking for.
excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Janet.
All right?
All right.
Have a good
Okay.
night.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, some simple
So-
math, just you know, when we're talking about values and everything, we'll just say someone was getting a full exemption. Their exemption went up, of their house went up only 50,000 over that exemption,
Their value.
the value of the home. Now they're gonna be paying about 890 bucks a year more out of their pocket that they weren't paying before.
If their value went up 50,000 more than
50,000 be half of the
than the
17.
exemption amount.
Yeah, it'd be half of, it'd be half of the 1776 if it's over, because at the 230, once they get over that 236 threshold, it comes out of their pocket.
Correct.
So if
Well,
they're,
that's if they're 80 plus.
If they're
if they're
80,
80, but
if they're
that's
80,
what I'm
you're
looking at, because if someone at 80 and their value went up 50,000, they were at 236, now it's 286, they have to come up with, you know, about $900 a year, which they didn't have. Can they do it? You know, obviously, if they're going for an exemption, things might be a little tight, so those are the things I look at, you know, what those figures would be, how many people fit into that category?
well, there's the question too, and this is more of a policy question, which is one of the goals to kind of keep people at zero, or is it to acknowledge the fact that there needs to be some kind of contribution to the broader system, and how much should that, you know, what's a reasonable amount to expect? You know,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And I'm not trying to touch a third rail. I'm just saying that that's kind of inside of this is that question that exists. So it's one of those things that has to be, I think,
That's
at least
a
talked
question.
about
And I
to
think-
see.
I think the way I look at it is that we should acknowledge we have a regressive tax system. And this is like a safety net for the people that are really at the bottom.
For sure.
Mm.
For sure.
And I think with the property values and everything increase, paying zero is actually, I don't think it's gonna happen. I don't think you can get to that point.
I want to acknowledge that Chris has her hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, Russ, it's funny, Russ said that right as I was thinking it. You know, you go from, oh, you don't pay anything till you pay taxes. And excuse my ignorance, because I am the least knowledgeable of anyone in the group, plus some, but what about sliding scale? So, okay, now you've crossed the threshold by $10. I mean, is it all or nothing? Is it, and if so, is there anything we can do about that?
Yeah, everything in the law is based on amounts. So anytime you make an adjustment to this law that we have locally that is allowed to be made, then you're adjusting an amount.
Okay.
So it's not going to be like, and we talked about this several years back, it's like, wouldn't the exemption program be better if it was percentage based?
Yeah.
So you could get up to 10% off if you were in a certain strata.
Mm-hmm.
But the law is absolute on amounts. So it's
Okay.
glued to amounts and not percentages.
So it's all or nothing. That's
It is, it really is
Okay.
all nothing, yeah.
all right. Yeah.
So in the analysis, we need to figure out there's more than one question at hand. One is the report that we'll get from Janet that will hopefully show us who sort of went from the zero class to paying something.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's probably going to be an average and a median in there of what that amount looked like. And then the question would be, do we want to amend these amounts that we have currently to do what we do today?
Right.
For the same person in the same household, if I'm saying it correctly? Or the same family in the same household, or that sort of thing? So
Right.
that's sort of what's at hand in my thought process.
But I think there's a bigger number there too on the table when we're talking about these people that were getting a $50,000 tax exemption and now they're getting 150. Like, I think there is something there too to say. That's a huge amount of the exemption
Right.
classes that's changed that number that you shared with us because. And it's again, I think we just need to be careful about how we present this and talk about it, because it has an impact across the board. Like, part of me says, you're kind of right, is there a different way
Yeah.
that makes sure that there's a little bit of equality here, because if, you know, somebody has a bigger house, but they still have the same income,
Mhm.
it's still, why is it okay because the person in, I don't know, in a smaller house is getting 100% tax relief, but
Hmm.
they have the same incomes, right?
The last time we did a deep dive into this, I think the number we were talking about at that time was around 34 million in exemptions.
Hmm.
But the actual value number was more like 68 million. So, and what I'm describing is the distance between a $50,000 home that got 100% exemption and the actual 152,251 number.
Yep.
That is the amount. So when you compare those two numbers, there was 100% exemption at 50,000, but there was another 100,000.
Added to the
So
exemption.
what we used to say, and again, this is, take it for what it's where it comes, is there was enough room in that exemption amount that the value could grow to 152,251 without impacting anybody's tax liability. Basically, there was room to move. So now with the latest value changes, the question is, how is that? What's that number look like now versus what it looked like then?
Hmm.
So because, and I realize I'm just talking about one strata of
No, you're-
residences that are, but you can apply that same thought process to capes, to multi-units, to single-family homes, you know?
I mean, or could you also argue that where the income limits are set, is it enough to say that these people literally, maybe across the board, like the 72-year, the new exemption, just shouldn't, maybe that number should be an amount that it's not gonna create a hardship. I don't know, like, we're not talking about people that, I mean, that is a pretty significant low income. Or is it? I don't know, like 40,000 a year for a single person is about 3,300 a month, but that's not the typical standard social security income.
No, but you have to also look at the other end of the, you know, if you start raising that a lot, if you start raising, even to equalize, you'd have to be, the 236, you'd have to be close to 400,000 to equalize it, which is absolutely insane. You know, there's so many variables, you gotta, and I think you gotta start at square one, is what does, you know, what does it cost the person to live these days? What's the
Okay.
actual money and what do they get?
And you raise a good point before you continue the conversation. It's also, this is a 3-part program.
Hmm.
So there's the value of the exemption is one part, then you have the income limits, that is a second part. And then you have a third part, which is the asset piece. So it may be, as you deliberate and sort of figure out where you think things land, you may be looking at those pieces individually, and you may say, well, the amount of the exemption should stay the same, but the income limit shouldn't be adjusted by some percentage or not. And the asset limit should be, you know, changed. Or the asset limit could be changed, right? And not the other two pieces of the puzzle. So it's really sort of a 3-prong program.
So maybe we should try an exercise where we leave the first part alone and then try the other two, how they work together.
It's almost like having a separate discussion on each of the
Each.
pieces and saying, are our limits on the exemption itself okay? And then are our limits on the income good still, or do they need tweaking? And then the asset limits, you know? Because each piece of that puzzle that you tweak has a different impact.
One of the thoughts that I had for the income part of it is that there's been a lot of work done in other areas for that. I mean, if you could look at affordable housing as an example, where they index it to something. Index it to median or income, I think. You could look at doing, then it's a percentage.
Yeah,
We don't want the same model, but the concept.
yeah, I was gonna say like the definition of affordable is, as defined in, New Hampshire law, deals with the federal, definition. And so for Exeter, if we still basing on a $300,000 per square foot average, it's probably more now. The calculation comes out that an affordable or the, income necessary to afford to live in Exeter is quite high. And,
Hmm.
what can we do about that if we're using federal standards?
But it doesn't need to be 100%. Could,
No, it's like
could be some,
45% of something or other. I
Yeah.
don't know the formula.
but that puts it into, we have all this data, we should use it.
But I think I really agree, you gotta dissect this into different parts, because there's been a lot of talk in the last 2 months. I've talked to a lot of people from different towns, and they're just, well, we're gonna raise this, and I said, well, why? Well, because people don't make enough money. Well, how do you qualify that? How do you qualify raising something just because you think you should do it?
So raising the income
Like
limit,
the
so
income,
more
yeah.
people qualify
Right, and.
for
yeah,
the program itself.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
I'm saying, well, you've got to come up, why are you raising it? And that's why I did my own little thing to say, what are expenses,
Yeah, yeah.
How much what do we really need to live on? And I think that you have to be, as a committee, you have to be realistic. And if you agree upon a thing, they say, well, geez, the average person can live on $40,000 a year. We'll just say, why would we have something at 60,000? It's just, doesn't make any sense to me. But then by the same token, if you find that, okay, the reasonable amounts of money, it's gonna be 45,000 and we've got it set at 40, then yeah, we're low. And
Yeah.
it's just like when you look at the 2 people versus 1 people, why? There should be a big spread on the 2 figures.
There's not.
There shouldn't be that much of a spread, because it almost costs the same amount of money for 2 people to live, other than food and maybe medical expense, that it would be for 1. So you get those little things you have to think about. And with some towns you look at, the spread is a lot bigger, and you say, well, what happens when 1 person passes away? The other person's gonna really have a hard time.
Yeah, that's what most of this is, so this person exactly recently widowed, and the income, as you can see, went from. They were getting about 3,000 combined as married, and then now that income went down to 1,821 with survivor's benefits. So now, and the person, they weren't together both alive, they weren't paying any taxes, and now there's a tax bill there. So just like I said, there is an impact. But like I kept taking that 40,247 today, and that's a $3,333 a month income. That's a pretty dang good income.
Mhm.
Like it's not that. I mean, I could live off of that. I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to, but I could.
Yeah.
If I was a single person, but I'm saying, that's what I'm saying, but we also know that that's not the average social security income.
No.
So I don't know if income limits really do need to be adjusted, because most people that are qualifying probably aren't making.
Well, again, and thinking about it too, when you're talking about an income adjustment, you're saying what used to be 40,000 to qualify, now if somebody makes 50,000 a year, they qualify. So you would have to conclude that the income limits are artificially low or shutting people out of the program that should be included as part of the program. And we just sort of went through figures that told us that 40,000 is pretty good.
Hmm.
I'm just saying that
No,
was
you're
part of
right,
the
but
conversation.
yeah.
So with our limit at 40,000, is it 900? It's not right in front of me. For single.
It's right here, 40,427.
Yeah, so are the people that are qualifying for the program still served by that number? That's one of the questions. And the 51,977
Well,
for married.
That's why I asked Janet if she was seeing a lot of people that weren't qualifying, and it sounded to me like she was saying it was more about assets than it was about income. I mean, most people aren't, I mean, as far as I know, people that are working, even if they're single people living in my community and they're working, that 33 is about the income. Yeah, they don't like the tax increase, but they're gonna be able to pay it.
Mhm.
I don't think it's gonna be. I think as you get older, like with a couple of I mean, I haven't thought about the married, but I don't think that the income is all that off from where, and I don't think it's a driving factor. I really don't. I think they're either qualifying or they're not. And I say, well, I know people that are on disability and their disability checks $1,100 a month. I can't, I don't know how they're like. I think that they're up for that. It just, yeah. All I can say is I don't wanna work till I'm dead, but it's gotta be there. But it, it's interesting, cause I don't, yeah, like I said, it would be interesting to see what Janet pulls back from information, so we can actually look to see what the real impact has been, how many people have been impacted
Mhm.
by this reassessment, and then people trying to say, I don't even know if like the answer is more, I don't know. I mean, again, like, I'm not overly, I am concerned, I'm like, so said, I'm more concerned about these people who don't realize they were supposed to be, like, now they're getting tax bills because they're not opening their tax bills, but at the end of the day, yeah. I mean, I would maybe like to see the limits adjusted slightly because of what we know about manufactured housing being a lot higher. I think it would be really helpful for some of those folks, but I don't know.
Yeah. So that's the income piece. Then you have the asset piece. So, and then that's the question of if somebody has $195,000 in assets, I'm rounding up. But if they have $195,000 in assets excluding their primary residence, is that, again, they have to fall into all of the categories to qualify for the benefit. But is that a reasonable number given 2025?
I don't know, call me crazy, but I look, if you've got a house that's worth 600,000. And you've got 191,000 in assets. So you're sitting on almost $750,000. And you're asking the town for financial help. I think you kind of have to rethink
Isn't that
your.
why you have assets when you retire, so you can draw down from them to pay your
You can, I mean,
expenses?
I'm just looking at, there's so many programs from reverse mortgages, and it's like, every once in a while, I want to leave something to my family. Well, you've got to live too. And that's, I guess, I'm old fashioned, I'm in my 70s. We've always learned, if you can't afford it, you don't do it. If you have a house that you can't afford, you buy a smaller house that you can afford. And those are things that, I mean, that's instilled into me. So when I just have this problem sometimes with, there's so much money there that.
Does
There-
anybody disagree with
there are
that?
other
I'm just
ways.
Curious, does anybody disagree with that statement that the asset amount seems a little high?
My asset is my house.
Right.
My car.
Yeah,
Right, like, but I mean, if you have that's, I mean, it doesn't count your house, so if you have
Right.
109, that's what I was saying, so if you have 195,000 in assets, why aren't you using that to pay your taxes?
Right.
I just, that's just how
Well, because you gotta go to maybe Florida for the winter.
I'd be curious to know, that's what I mean, and
No, it's,
Dan mentioned this. When we were talking in the interview about this community, like, how, well, I actually, no, I think I heard him on the select board meeting saying, like, how are we verifying that the people who are getting these exemptions
Well,
are really not capable of just not sharing, like, I'm just saying, like, there are people that really need the help. People that really
Right.
need the help to stay in a house, and then I wonder sometimes, like, how many, I don't know, I don't know the answer to that question, but.
Well,
Right.
that, brought up the question, do we look at their tax returns or can we?
But do they claim even their assets on their tax returns, though? That's a really. I mean,
Done my
I
own taxes.
Well,
don't.
let me share a little.
here it is. So if you have filed any of the following, please provide a copy. Interest and dividend tax return to the state of New Hampshire, federal income tax form, any other documents as needed to verify eligibility. So to Dan's point, which is a very good one,
Mhm.
this form here is meant to capture all of that information. So if you have
With a copy as proof.
total of all assets, you can't qualify for the program unless your assets fit the asset limits, but
So I come in here.
we're having
I
a little bit of a
record my assets, cause I don't bring you any proof, like who's verifying that I'm telling you what's on that form is accurate?
oh, and we do the internal verification of these things, like the vehicles and the RVs and things like that. Janet,
Yeah, but if I have a house in a lake house.
Or, yeah, or a 401k account with
Mm.
$250,000 in it,
and you don't report
but
it,
I don't report it.
yeah,
Well, I just
Basically
a
fraud.
quick story, just to make.
you
just
sign under the penalty of perjury
Yeah,
that this is accurate.
Quite a few years ago, I
mean-
got interested in this whole elderly exemption because of one customer I had. And the customer lived in Exeter, had a elderly exemption for an 80-year-old person. She's had it for quite a few years. I went to do some work at their house because they were to sell the house. Their son comes up, come to find out they had this big linen company down in Newburyport. It was a family-owned business for years. She basically gave all the assets over to the family because she lived in Exeter. She was able to live in this beautiful house because it didn't count her house. And they just gave her money when she needed it. And he actually said to me, he said, thank you, town of Exeter for her. And that bothered me. It really bothered me because I know there was a lot of people in this town that could use the help. And you're gonna get a few of those. And unfortunately, there's no way that Janet can, if you can
I know,
qualify,
but it's
you
the,
can
the
qualify.
money it would take just to try to figure that all out.
Yeah.
Right.
Ridiculous, but it's still.
But there are those people that do that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just,
So the clause in our application says, along with the perjury, is that I swear under penalty of perjury that all of the above is a correct and accurate accounting of my financial condition to the best of my knowledge. I further authorize any agency or financial institution to release information about me or copies of my records to any agent of the town. I release all persons whomsoever from any liability resulting from the release of this information. So,
That wouldn't cover Jerry's concern.
yeah, I mean, I think
Happens all the time too.
I think somebody under Jerry's example could come in and claim that their income is
Right.
X and qualify for the program when they're not really
When they're supported.
right. So to Dan's,
outside, yeah.
so back to Dan's point, I don't think the system is 100% insulated from,
well, what happens in case of
A
someone has a
scenario.
trust?
yeah,
If everything's tied up in the trust, how does that
It's-
affect
yeah,
everything?
it's-
Because now they technically don't have anything, so.
Mhm.
So, there's just all kinds of things that should be looked into.
so
Well, it's
those
what
are
makes-
good points.
There's a lot of gaps here. That's what I see. There's a lot of gaps across the board. And like I said, I think the intent to me is to try to make sure that the people that really need the exemption
They
can get
get-
it
right.
and not have it
Right.
affect them. But in the long run, it's like, we have to be careful what we do because then it could have an alternate effect. And,
Mhm.
and we didn't talk at all tonight. I know it's not a focus, but we were supposed to look at 79E.
Oh, you can talk to Jerry about that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I did go back and read it, but I think at some point, one of the things I wanna ask, I think for is, I'd like to see a listing of can we see the applications who have gotten that, or is that private as well?
No, you can see it. They're public.
that was one thing I didn't see on it. It
I
doesn't seem like it shows up on the MS1.
79E.
Yeah,
Well,
is that captured somewhere?
But I mean, the other thing I thought about, what was interesting is, I thought, my
I might have missed
understanding
it,
was that folks in town were getting property tax waivers, like and like. I think it's only supposed to be, they're not supposed to get a reassessed value for a
Right,
period
until
of
the-
time, right? Okay.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of misinformation around town about what people really get.
Don't get,
but-
they don't get taxed on the improvement
Right.
for
For
some
a
period of time.
number years.
Yeah.
There's forgiveness over a period of time,
But they are taxed at
and it is not on the
what it
MS1.
was before they started.
But and is this something that the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee is going to work on, making a recommendation that policy changes to only be about housing, affordable housing?
That's the Housing Advisory Committee.
They've kind of given up on that
Approach to it.
discussion, but yes, that was the
Cause it's on the scope of this committee, that's why I left it on, okay, so,
Yeah.
so where does that lie?
No, I think,
Cause I mean, it does have an impact, right, it has an impact on the whole bottom line overall,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, guys, I think, if you can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we had talked about 7E at the first meeting. We said we were going to wait until, to have a discussion on that to get the information. I don't, if I recall, today was just gonna kind of go over, the information that we were given, not necessarily dive into, like 7E, I could certainly talk to you guys about more, but I wasn't prepared for that discussion tonight. I thought it was kind of more of going over everything we've been received and maybe making some priorities.
Yeah, I just wanted to
I
make.
agree, we should be looking at it.
We talked last committee about the housing committee, I just wanted to make sure that we don't, like, we don't have to focus on it now, but I just don't wanna lose its focus, because we also talked, I said I was gonna go read it, but I thought at some point we had talked about wanting to see the list of items.
Oh, yeah, we were supposed to get that list. We
Yeah,
just haven't
exactly.
received it
That's
yet. But yeah, we were supposed to get that list and some more background information, and then once we have that,
Right.
then that would be something we could discuss, but it's kind of pointless to discuss if we don't see who's been granted it.
Yeah.
How much they've been granted, and any information that was provided during their application process, because I think that's important as well.
Yeah.
If we talk about verification and things like that. And again, I don't want to get into 790 too much, but yeah, we had part of when I was working with it, it was it was based upon, some need, expressed need for the tax break, if you will. And so anyways, yeah, I think we should have all the information first, kind of digest it and then discuss it. And I know we asked for it, we haven't received it yet, may have fallen kind of through the cracks, but like I said, that's one of the things that's kind of like, when I brought up earlier, what are our priorities? So we can tackle one thing at a time and not touch on everything for a few minutes, because it doesn't really,
Yeah.
makes it really hard to do anything really well if you're kind of spending 10 minutes on this, 10 minutes on that, 20 minutes on this. And I think they each deserve, like, especially with the elderly exemption, something, seeing how many elder we have in our community. And I really have been listening here this whole time. And all the different ways to look at it and the different pieces and parts of it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say one more time, I think it's really important that we say, okay, what do we tackle first? And let's just really hone in on that and get all our questions answered. And so then we can make a recommendation and then move to the next thing on our hierarchy of what we feel is most impactful for the residents of Exeter and most impactful for the revenue of Exeter as far as our taxes go.
I'll say this, I agree with you, that we need to concentrate, I think, on this elderly exemption and those three prongs of what is being decided. But I think 7090 is gonna be a rather short conversation. So we
Yeah.
might toss that one out at the beginning of the next meeting or
And
something.
again, I know where we need to prioritize, and the only reason I brought it up is because I wanna make sure we don't not get the information we thought we were gonna get last month. And Russ
Well-
has it written down, so we're
So
good.
I do.
Okay, great. Thank you. I want it too. I'm very, very interested because
Eliminated to share.
I feel like I personally feel like there's a way it should be implemented. I'm not sure, again, I can't say anything without having the information. And I hate to use hearsay, but according to hearsay, maybe it hasn't been implemented in the way that I have been led to believe it should be doled out, if you will. So yeah, I'd love to get that information, and I do think it'd be a very, again, yeah, one meeting, one and done meeting. But we can't have any kind of discussion until we have all that in front of us, so.
It is on the MS one. There are 2024 MS one, 5 structures.
So next
So-
meeting, I'm assuming
Where
we're
is
gonna
it?
come back and have more information to dive more.
It's the
into
23,
senior
Oh, no, it's on
The
the
elderly.
I have the
24.
24 somewhere, but
That we could probably, but there's nothing we're gonna do this year that's gonna make any difference anyhow, like, correct? We're too late to even get anything on the web, so, I mean, I do think we have. I think we had a good conversation tonight about the elderly. I think we have a list to get more information from Janet, and I think we can come back next month and really dig in a little deeper.
And could you send, this, and probably Janet, Yeah, because I'd like to,
Yes.
I really would like to find out monthly what, to really get a idea what people are spending monthly, to get a ballpark on if we're okay on our amounts right now, or,
So Chris, I don't know if you heard Jerry, but
But no dollar
there is a petition article that was
No dollar
submitted
figure.
to repeal 79E.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So I want to have it.
I didn't hear that part of it. I was listening, but I guess maybe I wasn't listening. 'Cause
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that there's an article that actually proposes eliminating it.
Mm.
Why it may be a short discussion,
Why do you say that, Julie?
because I've heard more people say shut it down than not.
Okay. I get you.
read the last sentence of each one of those, yeah.
Housing opportunity from housing.
Just the last
opportunity to
sentence.
Affordable housing opportunity.
Mm,
We haven't seen that as in our experience. It's all been
okay.
Not renting or renting high.
Mm.
I think.
Yeah, I saw the prices for the Ioka. Oh my God.
So all these.
Oh, Jesus.
Marketing for the Iowa properties.
Oh,
I mean, I think it's great marketing, but.
So for next meeting, we're waiting for a little bit more information.
Yes. And we're all good to meet the same third Wednesday at 6:30. Next Thursday, right?
okay.
Okay,
What's the date on that again?
The third Wednesday in February.
All right,
at
third
6:30,
Wednesday.
which I-
Okay. Cool beans. I'll be mobile.
You're recovering well then?
Yeah, yeah. I've had really good moments and really bad ones.
Yeah, it needs
But
to be stuff. Is it
nighttime is not easy, and getting up in the morning is much later than most people. So, but yeah, it'll be good. Definitely in a month, it'll be really good.
good to see you up and about in a month then?
So do we want to adjourn?
Yes, please.
I'll move to adjourn meeting.
Thank you.
Been seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, Christine.
Aye.
thank you.
Thank you, guys.